Hello, today we'll be presenting our project on a bio-inspired water collection system for drought-prone regions in Texas. When we say bio-inspired, we mean that our engineering approach is modeled after natural organisms that have already solved similar problems in the wild. Instead of building technology from scratch, we study how nature handles challenges like water scarcity, and we replicate those strategies in a human design system. In this presentation, we'll walk you through why Texas faces such severe water shortages we look to for inspiration, and how we converted those biological ideas into a functional water collection design. For our team, both of us contributed based on our strengths. Marcos handled the sketching, layout, and structure of the presentation with his computer science background. He brought a very organized and systemic way of thinking to the project. I took on the mechanical engineering perspective, focusing on the feasibility, the materials, and how the biologically inspired behaviors could be translated into physical design elements. By combining creativity with engineering reasoning, we are able to build a design that's both conceptually strong and practically realistic. Texas deals with persistent drought conditions, especially in the western region. These areas get very low rainfall and extremely high temperatures. The heat causes most available water to evaporate quickly, including water that's stored in open tanks or left on soil surfaces. At the same time, agriculture consumes most of Texas's freshwater supply. When drought hits, farmers struggle the most. Crops dry out, irrigation becomes inefficient, and communities face increasing water limitations. So the background problem is that Texas needs new, sustainable, and climate-independent methods to collect water. Methods that don't depend on rainfall and that can function even in extremely dry conditions. Right now, the methods commonly used to deal with water shortages in Texas aren't ideal. For example, traditional irrigation wastes water due to evaporation and runoff. Rainwater tanks only work in places where it actually rains, which is not reliable in West Texas. Desalination exists, but they're extremely expensive to build and operate and require a lot of energy. Desalination is the process of taking the salt and other minerals out of water to make it fresh water, more or less, so it could be used to drink, irrigation, other things as such. Fog nights, which work in coastal regions, fail in Texas because the air simply isn't humid enough. So the core problem we identified is most current water collection methods rely on environmental conditions that Texas simply does not have. Texas needs something that can capture even tiny amounts of moisture without depending on rain or high humidity. Our goal for this project was to design a system that could collect water even when rainfall is low. To do this, we turned to nature. Many organisms live in extremely dry environments, places even harsher than West Texas, yet they've evolved incredibly efficient ways to gather and conserve moisture. We wanted to identify those strategies and apply them to a man-made system. So our goal is to create design that is efficient, low cost, passive, and inspired directly by biological functions that already work in desert environments. We began with a process called biologizing, which means identifying organisms that naturally solve the same challenge we're facing. We studied three organisms known for surviving in dry climates. The first being the Namib desert beetle. This beetle survives in one of the driest places on Earth, but collects water using a special pattern on its shell. Its shell is hydrophilic, which means water is attracted to them, and hydrophobic areas, which repels water. When fog or dew hits the beetle, droplets form on the hydrophilic bumps and then roll down the hydrophobic slopes directly into its mouth. Our second thing was cactus spines. Cactus spines not only protect the plant, they actually help channel water. They do this using capillary action, which I'll go into more detail on shortly. This allows even very small droplets like dew or condensure to move down the spine towards the base of the plant where the roots are. Final thing was a camel nose. Camels have a unique nasal structure designed to conserve moisture. Inside the nose are many narrow passages that cool air when the camel exhales, causing water vapor in the breath to condense. This lets the camel recycle moisture instead of losing it. With those organisms in mind, we developed three possible engineering designs. Option one was a fog collecting roof. This was designed by the Namib beetle. The roof would use a hydrophilic and hydrophobic coating in patterns similar to the beetle shell. Even if humidity is low, Texas still gets morning dew, and the roof could capture that. Our second option would be a cactus-inspired drip irrigation tube. This uses the idea of cactus spines guiding water with capillary action. Ridges built into the tubing would help direct even tiny droplets straight to the plant's roots. So instead of how modern irrigation just flows or goes on top of it, which could lead to evaporation and everything, this would reduce that greatly because it would go straight into the roots. The option was camel-inspired air moisture condenser. This design uses cooling channels to force water vapor to condense, similar to how a camel's nose condenses moisture during exhalation. In this step, we converted each organism's strategy into an engineering principle. This is also where understanding capillary action becomes really important because it's the same physics cactus spines use to move water. Capillary action is the process where water could move through very narrow spaces without needing gravity or any external forces. It happens because of two main things: cohesion, which is water molecules sticking to each other, and adhesion, which is water molecules sticking to other surfaces. When the surface is extremely narrow, like the tiny grooves on a cactus vine, the adhesion force between the water and the surface is strong enough to pull the water upward along the surface. An everyday example is when a paper towel absorbs water and the water climbs upwards. That's capillary action. The cactus uses capillary action to direct tiny droplets downwards towards its roots. In engineering terms, this means we can design tubing with narrow ridges to naturally pull and guide water towards plants, even when the amount of water is very, very small. After comparing all three ideas, we chose the fog collecting roof because it scored the highest in our evaluation, 87%, and it was the most practical to build. The materials are very simple. It would be a hydrophilic coating like silica or titanium dioxide, hydrophobic coatings like Teflon spray, simple roof panels, gutters, and a small storage tank. The roof works the same way the beetle shell does. Moisture forms on the hydrophilic spots. The droplets slide off the hydrophobic areas. Gravity pulls them into the gutters, and the gutters direct the water into the tank. But what makes this especially effective in Texas is that it, we get predictable morning dew even during droughts. Our roof collects that dew passively with no electricity needed. How the design functions. Hydrophilic areas on the roof grab water droplets from humidity or dew. Hydrophobic areas help those droplets slide cleanly down the surface instead of sticking or evaporating. It ensures that gravity moves the droplets into the gutters. And then finally, the gutters collect the water and store it in a tank. Even though each droplet is tiny, the system collects water consistently over time. The system back to biology is the combination of natural principles involved. The beetles, hydrophobic and hydrophobic patterning capillary action for guiding the water, and the camel's condensation idea contributing to how surfaces cool and gather dew. Altogether, these natural strategies allowed us to design a system that works in conditions where traditional methods fail.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marcos Belver, and I will be explaining how our water collection design developed and how we use nature to guide our final decision. To begin, this first slide shows the very first draft of our idea. At this stage, we mainly wanted to get something on paper. We knew we wanted a sloped roof and a way for water to move into a tank, but we had not shown how water was actually formed or traveling. There were no hydrophilic or hydrophobic surfaces, and no indication that fog or humidity was involved. It looked more like a basic rain gutter than a fog collecting design. This drawing helped us realize that we needed to show the science, not just the structure. In the next drawing, you can see when we began applying the biology we studied. We started adding water attracting and water repelling areas, which came from the Namib desert beetle idea. We also added fog arrows and a basic collection channel so we could show how droplets might form and travel. This version showed more function and less guessing, but we still had issues. We had not clearly shown how water actually moved all the way into the tank, and the different zones were not clearly separated. It was an improvement, but still not communication ready. This final sketch is the version we decided to present. It clearly separates the system into three parts. At the top, the roof surface collects the moisture using hydrophilic spots. In the middle, the angled platform channels the droplets. And at the bottom, the tanks store the collected water. Now, the process is easy to follow, the design looks more realistic, and it captures both structure and function. This feels something like that could actually be built on a real roof. Then, when we asked ourselves, does this actually solve the problem? And when we found out it does, at least conceptually, the system can collect moisture from humidity, dew, and fog, even when there is no rain at all. It doesn't need electricity, which makes it practical for farms, rural areas, or even greenhouses. But we also discovered some real issues. The coating would wear off, humidity affects how much water it can collect, and regular cleaning is needed to keep the system working well. We suggested solutions such as stronger surface coatings, better designed gutters, or adding cooling surfaces to help condensation. Next, we looked at whether this system could actually be built affordably. The materials needed are all common and not too expensive, such as silica treatments, Teflon spray, gutter material, roof panels, and basic storage tanks. You do not need special machines to install it. That means it could be sold as a roof add-on kit and installed like any other roofing upgrade, which makes it more realistic. We also discussed who would benefit from it. Farmers in drought-prone areas, greenhouse owners, schools, and even homeowners who want to save water could use this design. It could be sold online or through agricultural suppliers. In the future, we could offer different versions for different climates, larger tanks for more water collection, smart sensors to measure water collection, and stronger surface coatings. We also explored the environmental impact. Since this design works without electricity, it uses almost no energy during use. It doesn't produce emissions while it's working. The main impact would come from the materials and how long they last. The parts can be replaced and recycled, which helps reduce waste. We then looked at the full life cycle, from early material sourcing to use to end of life. The system can be taken apart and the parts can be reused or recycled. If it helps people save or collect water for many years, the long-term impacts can be very positive, especially in dry regions and farming communities conditions. We would want to work with schools or farms to see how well it performs and measure how much water it can actually produce. We would test different coating textures, slopes, and materials to improve performance and durability. To finish, this design is bio-inspired because it learns directly from nature. The idea of sticky and slippery surfaces came from the Namib desert beetle. The idea of moving water along surface came from cactus spines. And the idea of capturing moisture out of the air came from the camel. We did not try to force nature to fit our design, and instead we learned from what nature already does well. To wrap up, I want to say thank you for listening and for taking the time to learn about our design. Our last slide shows the references we used throughout this project. These include scientific sources on biomimicry, moisture collection in nature, and water conservation research in Texas. They guided our decisions and helped us turn a simple sketch into a bio-inspired solution with real potential.